Ezekiel chapter 27, starting a brand new chapter. And this is, as it says in verse 2, the word of the Lord, Ezekiel chapter 27, verse 1, the word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyrus. Now, we've got at least three chapters here connected with Tyre, the trading city on the Mediterranean coast. And this one, Tyre is, chapter 26, Tyre is going to be eventually destroyed. And now, Tyre is going to be besieged by Nebuchadnezzar. And it took Nebuchadnezzar like about 13 years. And then its complete destruction, if you will, happened when Alexander the Great moved in and decided, he needed to conquer the world and be the ruler of the entire world. Nebuchadnezzar, you name it, any of those old-time emperors and stuff, that's what they want, rule the world. And but here, now we come, in chapter 26, this description of the destruction of Tyre, and now this lamentation, or if you will, mourning, over the loss, if you will, the destruction of Tyre. And of course, lamentation, would be like you're mourning a lost loved one, and you're crying over the loss. Okay? Well, that's kind of what this is. This is a poetic form here, and it's could be turned into a funeral dirge song, and here we go. So lamentation for Tyrus. Okay? And Tyre in this chapter, it's compared to a fair vessel, a good-looking, container of some kind, to whose equipment the various nations of the world at this time, the Mediterranean Sea, contribute. Okay? It's a trading nation. They are sailors. They go all over. They trade goods, okay, with everybody in the known world at the time. But they have this it's launched forth in majesty, Tyre is, and only to be eventually destroyed, only to be perished. So we've got several nations here that in this description, they point out that Tyre, center of commerce between the eastern and western world, and Jerusalem actually held this position also for a while, probably during the time of Solomon. Jerusalem was a trading nation for a short time. Jerusalem, but Tyre, and it was long maintained by Tyre. And remember, Solomon and David had a good, if you will, working relationship with Hiram, the king of Tyre, because they traded together. And and then, again, when Alexander the Great came in and set up the city of Alexandria in Egypt, Alexandria eventually took over Tyre's role, because Alexander had conquered Tyre, finally conquered Tyre about 200 years after this. And so Alexandria took over that trade business, if you will. So, verse 3, and say unto Tyrus, O thou thou that art situate at the entry of the sea. Okay. There, it's right there on the coast, and it's a lot of, actually ancient Tyre had two ports. You get, kind of one port controlled by the same cities, controlled by the king of Tyre. Okay. Two ports, one up there in the north. It was called, the northern one was called the Sidonian, and the Egyptian to the south. So one up the north end of the Mediterranean on the coast there, and on the south end. And that way, they could gather goods from the one on the north. They'd go to the northern isles up there. The one on the south would go to the southern isles. So situate at the entry of the sea. That's, understandable. They're right there where sailors would, a seaport would be. Okay. And which art a merchant of the people for many isles. Okay. Trading for many isles. Thus saith the Lord God, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am of perfect beauty. Okay. And of course, guess what ticks God off quite a bit is when somebody says, I am of perfect beauty. Okay. A lot of the nations that have been described in the previous chapters, the Ammonites and the Edomites and the Moabites, they all got this proud, if you will, look, and they were gloating over the destruction of Israel, and Tyre was kind of the same way, but because of its business and its commerce, they said, we're really great. Nebuchadnezzar thought his empire was really great. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 great wonders of the ancient world. He built those, and look at that. And then his grandson, Belteshazzar, get the right name there, came along, and the whole kingdom was lost in one day, one evening. And if you want to get on God's bad side, say something like, I am of perfect beauty. I'm special. I'm somebody. Okay? And so eventually, but thy borders are in the midst of the seas, thy builders have perfected thy beauty. Okay? And the builders here would kind of refer to all of those other nations that are trading with Tyre, because they're contributing to the wealth of this city. And of course, a rich city can build wonderful stuff. Right? And that's what they did. So thy borders. And now we come from verse 5 down to verse 9. We come with a descriptions of their ships, the sailing vessels that they used. They have made all thy shipboards of fir trees. Shipboards would refer to the hull planking. That would be kind of the idea, the hull planking. And thy shipboards of fir trees of Senir. Okay. Well, here's a kind of a name we haven't really heard, Senir, in the Bible. Well, it's actually the Amorite name for Mount Hermon in Israel. It's the Amorite name. Of course, when a lot of times when a, somebody like the Babylonian Empire moves in and they take over and they conquer everything, and you name it, any nation that moves in, conquers other nations, they change the name of whatever. Oh, here's Mount Hermon here, or here's Mount Sinai. When the Israelites moved in, oh, we'll call it Mount Hermon. We'll change the name. Okay. An example of that, Mount Rainier. What was its Native American? What was it? Mount Tahoma, something like that, I think.
There was a big thing about that, wasn't
Yeah, and they named it after some, explorer, some guy named Rainier, and changed the name of it. And of course, now we have in here in the valley, well, Kittitas is a Native American, name. I think Walla Walla, Washington. That's a Native American. Many waters, it means. And yeah, lots of water. Walla water. Yeah, double water. Yeah. And so there's a lot of stuff that that in even our state that have retained their native, or American, their native names, Yakima, all those. But that's the idea. You change the name, you move in, you conquer, you change the name, and that's what the Israelites did. Change the name of Sinai to Mount Hermon, and they got their fir trees off of this mountain. And they used those fir trees, probably because of the type of lumber that they were, for the hull planking. Okay? And they have taken cedars from Lebanon, and again, the Lebanese cedar trees, they were famous in the old world. Okay, they were the best. David and Solomon used cedars from Lebanon for the temple. Okay, the cedar trees from the temple, and I guess, I don't know. Are the cedars of Lebanon, are they completely wiped out of Lebanon these days? I don't know. Do they still have forests of cedar trees in Lebanon? Don't know. Yeah. There we go. Cedars from Lebanon to make masts. They made the masts for the trees. For thee, made masts to make masts for thee. So probably because they were straight, they were tall, they were long. And they could get, good. And then let's see. They a lot of the, the old time sailing ships. They were made. They used oak a lot. I'm not sure what they used for the masts, but like the old Ironsides, the planking for the hull, made out of oak because it was strong and good thick oak. And not sure what they made the masts out of. I'll have to research that. Anyway, so cedars from Lebanon, of the oaks of Bashan in verse 6. Okay, have they made thine oars? Again, using the oar because of their particular kind of wood. For the equipment for their ships, and their ships were renowned. They could travel the Mediterranean. Apparently the Mediterranean Sea is not a place you want to be in the middle of a storm. It's, they've had trouble, the winds blowing in there and all of that. You had to have sturdy, well-built ships. And the folks of Tyre had sturdy, well-built ships. Okay? The company of the Asherites, okay? Remember, Asher was one of the children of Israel, okay? And they supply, have made thy benches of ivory. Benches of ivory. I would assume, looking at the word benches, that this would be like the furniture. It may be on a sailing ship. A lot of these sailing ships also had, they had oarsmen. They would, you've seen all of the Greek warships that have, hundreds of slaves down there rowing. Okay? This would be kind of the same kind of deal. They would have, rowers in their ships when the wind isn't blowing. Okay? So these benches would be what they sat on at their stations rowing the boat. Made thy benches of ivory, okay? And that would be, now, it's probably possible that they were made of ivory with boxwood, right? And boxwood is a larch tree, and probably boxwood, larchwood, inlaid with ivory, because and ivory would be expensive. They'd have to, they have to get the ivory from the tusks of elephants in Africa. That's how far a lot of their trade went, even down into Africa. Folks from deepest, if you will, Africa would bring their stuff up to the sea, trade there for what they needed. They'd bring ivory, okay? And so benches of ivory brought out of the Isles of Chittim. And Chittim, the Isles of Chittim, it's used, that actually phrase is used constantly for Greece and the Grecian Isles. So some of this ivory is coming from the Grecian Isles, and wherever the Greeks, they were traders too. They would, this was a massive trading commerce operation here. It also, later on, what the Silk Road from China. Everybody would trade. There was a trading routes in between Europe and China, and the Silk Road, and all these travelers, all this commerce coming from China. Oh, they bring their silk. They bring whatever the Chinese had. They would bring that west and then send it all back. But it was a massive trading operation. And one of the reasons why we've got a lamentation or a mourning song, a funeral dirge, because all of this is eventually, God is saying all of this is going to end. Okay? He said in chapter 26 that all of this is going to end. All of the trade is going to cease. Okay? And when trade ceases, when commerce ceases, okay, nations fall apart, economies fall apart, okay? And and then come what? COVID closed down everything. The economy when you close down commerce, the economy falls apart, everything falls apart, and that's what's happening in the state now. Every Fine linen in verse 7 with broidered work from Egypt. Okay? This is the good cloth. This is the really nice, and of course, Egypt, that's what they used, fine linen, that's what they used in their embalming process for the pharaohs and stuff like that was so they were good at making linen cloth. And fine linen with broidered work, embroidered designs worked into the linen, okay, from Egypt was that which thou spreadest forth to be thy sails. Okay? They'd make their sails out of fine linen from China. They would decorate it. They would be decorated. They would, have designs on them, and they would, you could, yeah, from Egypt, and you'd know, hey, big advertising. They're seeing Egyptian sails with fine broidered designs on these ships from Tyre. Okay? So, advertising. There we go. Commerce, advertising. Blue and purple from the Isles of Elisha. And this is Elisha is, I guess Tyrian purple was famous. Tyrians imported from neighboring coasts the mollusks. I guess you had to make purple from mollusks, and they used that to dye the linen of Egypt. And Elisha is considered equivalent to the Greek Aeolus Islands on the western coast of Asia Minor. Okay? And this and the islands adjacent would very naturally have commerce with the Tyrians. And in early days, the supply of this, these mollusks from the coast of Phoenicia had been insufficient for the Tyrian manufacturers. So apparently the Aeolus Islands in western coast of Asia Minor, okay, those islands abounded in those mollusks that they could use for their purple and blue. Inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners. Okay? They got sailors from all over. Zidon and Arvad, thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee, were thy pilots. Okay? The smart guys were the, if you will, the captains of the ship, the pilots that knew the coast, knew where to go, and knew how to get there. And the ancients of Gebel and the wise men thereof were in thee thy caulkers. Okay, these are the guys that are skilled at stopping the leaks, if you will, in the boats, in the ships. Caulkers, they would stuff the caulking into the chinks in the ships. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. That was their job. All of those merchants, all the ships, all of the mariners, that was their job. Okay? And when all of that ended with Alexander the Great, and between Nebuchadnezzar and Alexander the Great, okay, all that ended, and again, loss of commerce, nations destroyed, and Tyre, Tyre is not a trading town anymore. It's a big archaeological dig site where they dig stuff up to prove that, we found something. And hey, and also when they dig stuff up from Tyre and all of these other archaeological sites, it shows that, hey, what the Bible says is true. And what God said here with the destruction of Tyre, that's all true. You can count on it, because if God said it, it's true. Okay.